We're going to pick a combined Kilkenny 2008, Limerick 2021 team here now. It's going to get hot and heavy. It's going to get feisty. We expect the comments to fly in, and our bias is going to show in all directions. Obviously, no doubt.
Just a quick one for you as well. Like, this is Kilkenny 2008. This is Limerick 2021. This isn't what Kilkenny have done since, or it's not what Limerick have done before so much, really. Or what?
We don't want to hear about Kilkenny beating Cork in 2006 with that great, like high press and hunting and packs. That's nothing to do with it. It's 2008 against 2021 alone.
Yeah. That's the way you have to look at it. And like, when we're going to be comparing Cody and Kylie later, this is going to be Brian Cody after, I think this was his 6th or 7th All-Ireland. We're not comparing 11-time All-Ireland winning manager Brian Cody, and we're comparing him to 3-time All-Ireland winning manager John Kiely at the moment. So it's 2008 versus 2001 and those years alone. Yeah,
and people, get your comments in. And not only if you want to tell us who you want in the team, but why, and why they get into a slot ahead of somebody else, because that's sort of crucial here. We can all say, look, you have to put in Henry Shefflin there, you have to put in Aaron Gillane, you have to put, at some stage you're going to have to leave people out. So tell us who's going in, who's not, and why. So it's we'll start off in the goals. You've PJ Ryan and you've Nicky Quaid. Now, would you contend that back then puckouts weren't as difficult or as important as they are now? I mean, they're obviously always important, but PJ Ryan knew pretty much, if I put snow on him here, the ball is going to get won by that half-forward line of the likes of, Owen Larkin, Richie Power, Martin Comerford. Shefflin can come out, he can win one. Whereas now it's far different. But then again, of course, people would say Nicky Quaid can just go short to a free man all the time because the opposition are going to drop off the likes of Harry Nash.
Yeah, you'd love to go back and just look at 2008 and were puckouts ever even discussed, or was it literally just hit the ball as far as you can? And I'd say that was the way the approach was. And it's such just even talking about, just to step away from the keepers at the moment, but what they're hitting the ball to, the half-forward lines are so similar and are very similar in many ways, in that you can hit down on top of any of the three of them. You're not going to be, while you might be hitting it long, it's not predictable down to the left channel or predictable down the middle. It's wherever you want to put it at a given time. You're not going to be hitting the same man the whole time. PJ Ryan obviously was a brilliant shot stopper. The 2009 performance, obviously, we hadn't seen that yet, so we're only just looking at this in 2008. He wouldn't have played, this would have been one of his first years in the goals, actually starting for Kilkenny. Quaid in 2021 has been Limerick goalie for the guts of a decade. Whereas PJ Ryan is a rookie goalie in 20 or 2008. Realistically, that's what you have to say that.
Yeah. So look, again, it's difficult to remember the ins and outs of every game from the 2008 season. So I'll just give a quick overview of how it went for Kilkenny that year. Were you playing in that game 224-012, the Leinster semi-final? No, I'm not even trying to sneer.
No, I was. Yeah. Funnily enough, it was my second championship game for Offaly, and that was Richie Hogan's championship debut. He went off after 55 minutes, and who replaced him to make his championship debut? Only TJ Reid.
Yeah. Okay, so they won that game 224-012. I don't think I'm being insulting by saying that wasn't a huge challenge for Kilkenny that day. Then the semi or the final of Leinster, 521-17 points. I mean, Leinster was a bit of a joke for Kilkenny for years. They were just walking through and getting ready for an All-Ireland semi-final, while the Munster teams were absolutely battering each other. And then Kilkenny, they obviously got a bite of the All-Ireland semi-final. They beat Cork 123-017, and then in the final 330-113. If I remember correctly, the one goal that was scored against Kilkenny that year, James McGarry was in the goals at that stage. He'd come on late on in the final, am I right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. It was a mistake, yeah.
Yeah, so you'd have to say, in terms of conceding goals, PJ Ryan didn't concede one. Whereas obviously Limerick were breached once or twice this year. I'm pretty sure they were, weren't they?
Limerick were breached once against Cork. Tipperary breached them twice in the Munster final. Waterford didn't get a goal in the semi-final, and Cork beat them once in the final. Was Nicky Quaid at fault for any of them? No. Don't think so, being realistic now either.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pushing. PJ Ryan obviously had a very good year. The quality of the opposition in some of those games for Kilkenny was, far lower. So I'd be pushing for Ryan in this one.
You'd be pushing for Ryan or Quaid?
Sorry, I'd be pushing to give it to Quaid ahead of Ryan.
Yeah, no, I'd be pushing for Quaid as well, in fairness, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's just so calm the whole time as well, just so good on the ball. They know when the ball is in his hand, there's a 75% chance of them retaining possession. So Quaid for me, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, so Patrick Hickey's saying here, I'm surprised he isn't trying to put a Clare lad in here somewhere. Sean Finn, Noel Hickey, and Jackie Tyrrell. What do you think?
So like Mick Kavanagh to me is one of the great cornerbacks, I have to say. He was a brilliant cornerback. I don't ever remember him being in trouble throughout his Kilkenny career. And the only reason he lost his Kilkenny spot was because Loughton's went on a run in the Leinster Intermediate Championship and he just never got back in. So like Sean Finn is a brilliant cornerback and has been obviously probably going to get his 4th All-Star in a row. But that's far from a foregone conclusion. Far from it.
Yeah, Michael Kavanagh certainly picked up a number of All-Stars. I'm actually going to try and look it up there. What about the full-back slot?
Noel Hickey was there for so long and was so solid for so long, whereas Dan Morrissey is only he's still a relative rookie at fullback, albeit a brilliant rookie. If Dan Morrissey had more time under his belt, I think he'd have a chance of turning that around. If he was there for the rest of his career, the next 5 or 6 years in Limerick are still really, really dominant. I think he has a chance maybe of turning that around. But Noel Hickey was just so solid throughout his whole career, realistically.
Yeah, and considering what he come back from health-wise as well, I think Noel Hickey definitely gets that full-back slot. So we're agreed on that one anyway.
Yeah.
So then with Jackie Tyrrell, I think Michael Kavanagh was very, very good. And I used to work with him back in the bank around this era. So I would be sort of pushing towards him a little bit. But like Sean Finn has been so good. He was so good all season. He's just very, very dominant. I know a couple of scores came off him early in the All-Ireland final. But, he's not far off man of the match in a few games. I don't know if Kavanagh was more of a stopper, whereas obviously Finn is that, but he's kind of driving out with ball too and putting the team on the front foot from inside his own 21.
Yeah, Kavanagh just going through his honours here. 10 Leinster titles, 8 All-Irelands, 5 leagues, 4 All-Stars. It's a fair body of work. And if anything, Verdi pushing for KK where possible. We're talking about 2 of the greatest teams that have ever played here. There's no foregone conclusion here. Finn is a brilliant player, and the only thing I would say is Finn offered something a bit different maybe than Kavanagh did, in that Finn will work the ball out and could go for a return pass as well. Listen, I would be favouring Finn, but I just think it was not a foregone conclusion. Michael Kavanagh is one of my favourite hurlers, I have to say, having looked at. Obviously, it was the year after, but it was his little kind of slide out over the sideline in 2009 to set up that goal that basically helped turn the tide as well. But it's not I'll agree with John Finn, but it's 60-40, I would say. It's not the 80-20 or 90-10 that people are saying.
Oh, obviously not. Definitely not. I'd agree with you on that front. All right, so Jackie Tyrrell obviously had a very good... Well, look, he had many, many good seasons for Kilkenny. But it's a very different role. So this is the difficulty in trying comparing them. Nash was probably sweeping, holding the shapes only at times, and then obviously bringing out the ball a nice bit. He got a point from play also. So it's kind of a difficult one to compare the 2 roles. It's definitely not like for like.
You're reminding me of, I forget what soccer coverage it was, but they go to Liam Brady and ask him about something. He just says, he plays a different role, Bill. Just like they are 2 completely different roles. Tyrrell bombed the ball down the pitch, and whereas Barry Nash is a runner, can obviously score from distance and go forward as well. It's amazing how positions have changed over the years. But Jackie was never caught out really at cornerback, not in any big games really. And if you look at it as well, Barry Nash is a 2-season rookie at cornerback. Jackie Tyrrell have been playing there. In fairness now, I would say this as well. Jackie Tyrrell was probably only there 3 years at that stage, would be right in saying. 06 was his first year, so 06, 07, 08. So when you look at it, that's not a foregone conclusion as well, even though Jackie Tyrrell has had the better career so far and has achieved an awful lot more. But you're looking at a guy who played cornerback for 3 years at that given time against a guy who played cornerback for 2 years. Yeah,
Nisha Waldron made a good point there. Finn is often in the discussion for hurler of the year. No other cornerback has ever really been in that kind of group. I think Cathal Barrett was in 2016 for most of that season, to be fair. And I do feel that there's got to be one or two other cornerbacks that have been in that discussion. Jackie Tyrrell did win his second All-Star that year. Actually, the entire Kilkenny, from 2 to 5, they all won All-Stars. As well, look, a huge amount from won All-Stars that year. So what way are you leaning towards here? Playing a very, very different type of game. I'm trying to even remember who Tyrrell marked in that All-Ireland final that year. Would you have marked
John Milan?
John Milan.
Milan was one of the few Waterford players. I remember reading Jackie's book after, and he took it very hard. I think looking at the ratings for the final after, because Milan, I think, it got 3 points in that game. Jackie was still very good, but I remember he was talking about his mindset and basically how he took it very, very hard. He took it very, very hard that, you know, it was a perfect performance, essentially, aside from him. But that he was being overly harsh on himself, in fairness.
Okay, well, we haven't seen Barry Nash say anything like that about himself, and we're trying to, it's very tough to separate two. Do we go and take that? I don't know. Like, as you said, John Milan did get 3. Like Nash, he was free at times, but
no, come on now. We can debate it up and down, but Jackie is still marginally ahead. Even I'm saying he was only on the Kilkenny team 3 years. He obviously been hovering around the panel for a few years before then, and he was an out and out cornerback. Fair enough, the gap isn't as big maybe as people would think, but it's probably still Jackie marginally heading that one. Okay,
I'm curious to see if people agree with that, because it's a team that got absolutely annihilated and only scored 113, and 3 of those was for Milan. So I mean, on the other side of it, you have Barry Nash, who's driving the team the other way forward, but he is kind of playing at times as a spare man. So, do you know what? It's the tougher job for Tyrrell that day. So for a finish, I'm gonna agree with you there.
In the heel of the hunt.
In the heel of the hunt. You knew I was about to say it there. I did stop myself right at the last moment. Let's see the comments coming in agreeing. I'd go for Jackie, to be fair. Nash was put in there as emergency choice after injuries, even though he's done very well. Jackie for sure, says Andrew Sullivan. And then Nisha adds, sorry, maybe Ollie Canning might have been in and around the hurler of the year talk as a cornerback. Has to be Jackie over Nash. Defender's gonna defend. And Milan scored 3 points when Kilkenny took the handbrake off.
He was also gone out to pitch, in fairness, and he'd admit that himself. He said there was no way he was standing in corner forward, so he drifted out to pitch. But technically, the scores were off Jackie.
And Ben Judge adds, Milan probably thought he was roasted too with that score. Now let's go into the half back line. It's Diarmaid Burns against Tommy Walsh. Christ almighty! I mean, Tommy Walsh won hurler of the year in 2009. That's not to say that I'm saying 2008 wasn't a very, very good season for him. Of course it was. But his highest watermark was 2009 for my money. What do you think?
Yeah, it was. He was getting there in 2008. He'd been so consistent. Obviously, it was 9 All-Stars in a row in different positions. There's like, look at the half back lines, and there's just I think when you compare the two teams, the half back line and the half forward line is what really, really resonates. Actually, probably, to be fair, from 5 to 12, you just have a half back line that is impossible nearly to penetrate on both sides, and you have a half forward line that can all win their own ball and can all score from distance, and you have 2 worker bees in the middle of the field. Like, it's sometimes we probably overcomplicate hurling a bit. At the end of the day, the half back line to me is still the most important line in the pitch, bar none. Because if you can't get past that half back line, you can have the dandiest forwards inside. They just won't get the ball. But like Walsh versus Burns, Tommy would have played his first final in 2003, so has a fair body of work under his belt at this stage. And like Tommy was always delivering 8.5s at this stage as well. Like he was just, yeah, like I suppose maybe more. There was more highlight reel catches maybe than Diarmaid Burns, but Diarmaid Burns is catching him, I would say, but he's not there yet.
It's Tommy. It is Tommy. Look, you and I both rate Burns really, really highly, but it is the man who needs no surname. I've actually, Joe, what I'm going to change that to saying Tommy.
Just,
I think
just Tommy.
Yeah, we'll just change that to Tommy. Brian Hogan against Declan Hannon. Both like to sit, both like to sweep. You could argue that, as a native forward, Declan Hannon might probably be the better ball player there, maybe move more swiftly, but like Hogan, some man to go up and collect the ball, very good sweeper, very competent. What way are you leaning here?
Hogan just did the simple things right, didn't he? He was just so effective, and the times you noticed Brian Hogan was when he wasn't there, because he was just so effective and it was a hard spot to fill. Fairness, John Tennyson came in the 06 final and was good. But Brian Hogan was obviously missing in 2010 as well. And that's probably maybe forgotten a small bit. He had that, did he break his finger or something like that in training or something a couple of weeks before?
Are you trying to question Tip's unbelievable All-Ireland win in 2010?
No, but I just think it's funny. It always goes back to Henry and Henry, getting injured. But Brian Hogan, to me, like, I'm not saying he was as big of a loss, but he was a massive loss because it changed the whole shape of the team. When you come back to Hogan versus Hannon, yeah, like Hannon can be kind of unheralded at times too, but he dictates the play far more. He sets up some amount of attacks. You would rarely have seen Brian Hogan coming forward to shoot for a score. I'd say Brian Hogan probably wasn't as comfortable on the ball as Declan Hannon is. I don't know if has there ever name me a back. Very good, James S. Staple wondering why Callan isn't on the team. I agree with him 100%. Can you name me a back who is more comfortable on the ball than Declan Hannon?
Let me see.
A back that's not his teammate.
Caelan Lyons, very comfortable on the ball. Let's see. Do you know what? You kind of caught me on the hop a little bit there. I think Mark Coleman. Mark Coleman
wouldn't be far off. Again, another real good kind of ball-playing centre-back. Declan Hannon probably doesn't get the kudos he deserves for his defensive abilities as well. It's like people think he can be got at. Maybe he can be. Have we seen it yet? No. He's very, very good defensively. Very good at getting his body in as well. I think that's a tight one now. I have to say, I do think it's tight, but I would definitely be favouring Hannon.
Yeah, I'd be looking for Hannon here too. Just about. I mean, again, I think everyone realises this isn't the case of insulting any of the lads that are left off the team. It's a bit of fun. It's two brilliant teams, two brilliant 15s, and we can only pick 15 out of the 30.
Anyone that loses out, Shane, is losing out to an opposition player on what is either the best or one of the best or the second best team of all time.
Well, look, that remains to be debated another day, whether these are the best. Pádraig Walsh, ball playing back as well from Naoise Waldron, a Kilkenny native himself. So let's move on to the other wing back here. This is a very interesting one because, JJ Delaney is considered, arguably the best fullback, or best wing back of all times, but he was obviously brilliant fullback also. And he spent, I remember looking at I went to one of the Kilkenny media nights and they had a booklet about all the players and they actually listed the amount of games that all the players had played in different positions. And JJ Delaney had played more games at cornerback than I'd actually recalled. So you could put him in a lot of different positions. But this is about 2008, and JJ Delaney was excellent that year, as he was pretty much every year. 2011, he got man of the match in the All-Ireland final. He's got pretty much every accolade you could talk about in the game. But there is a big frenzy over Kyle Hayes and how he's played and the goals he's scored. So if we're just going to talk about 1 year alone, are you going to look at Kyle Hayes' goal against Tipperary? Are you going to look at his goal against Cork, against probably stronger opposition than Kilkenny played in 2008, and say, well, look, if you're just going to go with picking that year in isolation, you might actually have to go with Hayes, even though you might say over the course of his career, JJ Delaney's one of the greats.
Yeah, it's an out-and-out defender against Kyle Hayes. To me, is an underrated defender. I think his defensive capabilities are savage. People maybe just look at him going forward, but Hayes can do something. Not saying that JJ couldn't do it, but he didn't do it or didn't have to do it. Hayes, is a new age wing back that rampages forward. Teams have to think about who's going to be marking him. Like, we haven't thought, that wasn't the case. Even with JJ or even with Tommy Walsh, teams didn't have to think as much. Well, saying that, Lara obviously followed Tommy around, so that's not to say that he wasn't being taught.
That worked out.
Yeah, that worked out really well. That's not to say that that wasn't the case with that Kilkenny team, but it's an out and out defender. As Andrew said there, Cody described him as the best defender he's ever seen, and I would say the same. To me, Brian Whelan is the best hurler I've ever seen, but JJ Delaney is the best defender I've ever seen. And it is a clash of styles. While they can both do the defensive duties, Hayes going forward does offer you something a little different.
Do you think, if you're the opposition manager, do you think you had to plan more for JJ Delaney back then or more for Kyle Hayes now?
I know from being in an Offaly dressing room that we planned, and it didn't work out, but we planned an awful, like, the big part of our plan was the Kilkenny half back line, and in particular JJ. And you can have all these great plans of, get this lad on the ball, get X, Y, and Z on the ball. If you can't break that, if you put that puck out down on top of JJ and he catches it overhead, which he invariably did, he did it to Dan the Man, like one of the best in the air. He cleaned him out in the air in the All-Ireland semi-final one year. He could do it to anybody. It's two different things. That's not to say that you couldn't puck the ball. You could puck more ball down in Hayes, I would say, than you could on Delaney. Delaney would snap ball and would bring ball forward. Hayes doesn't snap ball like that. Unless I can't remember. I don't remember him snapping a lot of puck outs. Burns would be the one of their three halfbacks that would snap more ball, I think.
Oh, it's tough. Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. But like going the other direction, hurling has changed now. Your halfbacks need to be able to drive forward. Could JJ Delaney have done then, like he was a supreme hurler, could he have done then what Kyle Hayes is doing now, or with more modern preparation, S&C and whatever training has come in now? Was he capable of doing the devastating sort of things that Kyle Hayes has done? I don't know anyone else who could have scored that goal.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you, but I don't know anybody else, and I don't know anybody else who would have got back for some of the incredible hooks or the incredible blocks. I don't know.
In 08.
Okay, well, I don't know anybody else that would have snuffed out some of the best attackers of the time in the way that he did, in the way that Delaney did at the time. In 08, you're obviously saying JJ had a couple of All-Stars in the bag, had come back from a cruciate, was hurler of the year at this stage in 03 as well. Again, I will bring it back to Hayes is in his second season at wing back. Yes, he offers something completely different that we haven't seen before. But like as Nisha said there, it was Delaney Island. If you puck the ball down there, this shark was going to go up and grab it, and you weren't going to get the ball. That was just the way it was.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one. I do think it's a tough one because, we all rate JJ Delaney as one of the best wing backs that you're ever going to see. But just what Kyle Hayes did this year, I mean, and I did talk about him a few times as if he's getting turned over. And earlier in the season, I was like, would you put Tim O'Mahony ahead of Kyle Hayes? I think in the wash-up, you're not going to do that. But I think it's closer than, like, there are people commenting in both directions here. But I do think it's JJ Delaney, but not by a whole pile.
No, there's very little in any of these, and obviously there is a bit of recency bias comes into it because you see just how dominating Hayes is now, and plus the game has changed so much. Like it has. Like, would JJ adapt to the way hurling is now and maybe been a marauding wing back? I don't see why not, to be honest with you. I don't see why not. You're going to be conditioned differently and you're going to play differently. But as one of the viewers said there, this is like trying to pick your favorite child in some of these instances. Like this is the cream of the cream, like you're picking from. But yeah, I think I would be giving it to JJ in that instance. But like again, there's nothing between them.
Yeah, the cream of the cream, double cream. Midfield then, Cha or Will O'Donoghue? Geez, you couldn't have been picking two more different types of midfielders. Could you really? No, Cha scored a couple of points in the All-Ireland final. He scored 2 points against Watford that day. Not sure how much you can read into that. Will O'Donoghue, very physically dominant throughout that season. So if you're going to go, like, this is like picking apples against oranges, isn't it? And the same with Darragh O'Donovan against Derek Ling. Like, Derek Ling, up and down the field, up and down like a whore's knickers. This sort of lad had some engine on it.
Now, the only thing here now, right? The way we have it set up, I would prefer to have, like, is it possible? We're talking about midfield here. We're not talking about any other positions. To me, my midfield pairing is Will O'Donoghue and Derek Ling. That's the midfield pairing I would choose.
Is that for modern hurling or for hurling back then?
Both, really, to be honest with you. But I'm asking you, like, is it possible to have Will O'Donoghue? Yeah, as Andrew says there, can we have Will O'Donoghue and Cha, or do we have to match? I don't think necessarily we have to. I think we're picking the best two midfielders of the four. It's the only. Okay. Like I have to say, I love Derek Ling. I thought he was such a powerhouse, such an engine. If you're asking me, could he do what modern day midfielders do now? Yes, I think he was doing it then. I honestly do think he was doing it then, and he was flying forward to get scores as well. Imagine how strong, both defensively and offensively, you would be if you had Derek Ling and Will O'Donoghue in your team. Holy Christ. The cover you would have for your defenders would be unreal. You have these two powerhouses midfield, and you have two guys that are able to burst the tackle and go forward. It's just they're the two I would pick. To be honest with you.
Will says he's only logging onto the stream now. Vernie, you never mind what anyone says about your hair, all-star or not. You grow that bird's nest as long as you see fit.
Go on, Will, boy.
Yeah, Derek Ling was a beast, underrated like Limerick lads. He was a brilliant player, no doubt about it. A few people are messaging in about Michael Fennelly, but he was an unused sub in that final. So how do you work him into the team there? So are we going along with that then? We're going with with Will O'Donoghue and with
Yeah, we're underselling Cha here. We definitely are. I'm just saying, like, Derek Ling was one of my favourite players in that Kilkenny team. I just thought he was the powerhouse, and I think Will O'Donoghue is that powerhouse for Limerick now. But Cha was music on the ball, like he was so good on the ball. He could he was kind of nearly pushed out of the Kilkenny team because it had become such a physical game. But like, imagine him now, and imagine him at modern day training now. He'd be the engine. Imagine the amount of ball playing he could do around the middle of the field. He could be probably like your Keane Lynch back then, if that was the way the game was played. I'm just saying, for me, it would be Derek Ling and Will O'Donoghue, but Cha would be a close third, and that's not to be disingenuous to Darragh O'Donovan. I just think he's coming up against some real heavyweights here.
Yeah, we all know you never like to be disingenuous, don't we?
Yeah.
So Will O'Donoghue and Cha, and Ling.
Are you happy with that? You haven't.
I'm pretty happy.
Argument against it, yeah.
I'm pretty much on board with that. They're both, like as Nisha says here, Cha could make the ball talk. Music on the ball is how Hussein playing for Kula is described. I'm not really sure that it is. I mean, I'd like it to be described that way, but it's not really happening. Now, we'll go with Derek Ling. He was a monster at the time. And Will O'Donoghue is something similar too. I mean, they're not all overly similar, but I think people know what I mean.
Derek Ling was at his best, I would say, around this time as well. For just the 1 or 2 years leading into this, and probably a year or two after.
Yeah, I just see him thundering around the field, and I mean that in a good way. Like, he's just really imposing guy. So it's starting to get tasty now. Gearóid Hegarty or Goethe? Martin Comerford. I mean, Hegarty had a sort of he was hurler of the year in 2020. He wasn't quite to the same level in 2021, but he still scored 2-2 from play in an All-Ireland final and had a good season. So when I say he wasn't as good as 2020, the 2020 season, it's not an insult per se, but it isn't quite at that same level. So what do you think? What way are you leaning there?
Oh, that's difficult. Two kind of real forces of nature. Like, how many big scores did Comerford come up with for Kilkenny? You also have to bring his versatility into it. Probably 10, 11, 12. You could probably play 14 as well.
Didn't score in the final. Taken off after 43 minutes. Look, we're trying to find reasons to pick one over the other, but still say, obviously, Goethe was a brilliant player. Yeah,
Gearóid Hegarty's 3 final appearances. I think he got 2 points in 2018. He got 7 last year, and he got 2-2 the other day. It's difficult. I just thinking, like, Hegarty has probably hit higher heights, I would say. I'd say Comerford consistently hit a really good high. Like, he was still flying in 2003. Didn't he get the goal in 2003 that helped him over the line? That bouncy shot in front of Cusack. He's obviously been there a while, but was probably on the way in. Would that be fair to say? Like, he was a sub in 09 and came on again in 10, I think, did he?
He came on in 09 and scored that goal, the key game-breaking goal. But I think you can't, like, if we're looking for, like, in a game of fine margins, if we are looking for a reason to leave somebody out, being taken off after 43 minutes and not scoring in an All-Ireland final where he scored 330 versus another guy. And, TJ Reid came on in his place and scored 4 points. So, I mean, we're talking about a Waterford team that was wide open. I don't see how you leave Gearóid Hegarty in 2-2 in an All-Ireland final out of this.
Yeah, and I just think as well, as good as Martin Comerford was, and I said his versatility was unreal, and his ability to hit the onion bag was huge as well. Hegarty's ability, fall back to the half-back line and score from there, particularly in the modern game, is huge. Like, and he's one of the most foulable players now. Hurler of the year last year, as Nisha said there. I think it's hard. I think it's kind of hard to. There's two brilliant players. But I find it hard to go against Hegarty.
I do enjoy when you call people foulable players, and Shane O'Donnell is the first one that comes to mind because you always talk about him.
Big time.
Okay, right. We're going to go with Hegarty at right wing forward there, wearing the number 10 jersey. How about centre forward, Cian Lynch and Richie Power? Oh, God almighty, what have we gotten ourselves into here?
Yeah, the only thing I'd say about this is I think Richie's best form came later. Like even in 14, when he got a crucial goal in 14, like that's 6 years after this. He only made his debut. I think he made his debut in 05. I don't think he played in 04. It's either 04 or 05. So he's kind of on the scene, but he was kind of on and off the team a bit.
And he didn't win an All-Star in 2008. So again, if we're looking for fine margins and reasons to leave guys out, like Henry Shefflin is named number 14 in this, but he won his All-Star at centre forward. Now, there would have been a bit of moving around or whatever, but that's just a point worth keeping. You might as well take that into account.
Yeah, like I think, like as good as Richie Power was, I don't think he was at his best at this time. And I do agree with Conor. Like we both think Richie Power is class. And one of the reasons why Kilkenny have slipped off the radar, and particularly did after 15, were his injuries and the fact that he couldn't play inter-county hurling for another couple of years. But Cian Lynch, I was just reading this morning, like he's going to be hurler of the year again this year. He's going to be a 2-time hurler of the year.
Oh, there's no doubt about
it.
Yeah.
He is joining like elite company. Like Shefflin has 3, Brian Whelan has 2, and you can count them like one hand. I'd say the amount of people that have been multiple time hurler of the year. It's like he's at his very best at the moment. So yeah, it's I think it has to be Cian Lynch.
And then okay, so we're agreed on that. We're putting Lynch in centre forward here, and I'm sure people are going to say when we get towards the very end of this, well, what if you move Shefflin out wherever and move somebody else in wherever? I even see someone commenting there that Goethe was excellent in a full forward, which he was, of course, but around this time, I don't think he was playing inside as much. Tom Morrissey, wing forward, or Owen Larkin? I think this is. I don't think there's much debate here. There's obviously massive debate here, but to me, Owen Larkin was at his very, very best in 2008. He won Hurler of the Year. To me, he was by a mile the best hurler in the country that year. And to me, it is going to be Owen Larkin all day here.
There's more of a debate than you think. Like I think now, to be fair, like Tom Morrissey is playing some of his best stuff. Like 2020, we both agree that he should have been shortlisted for Hurler of the Year, and I think we would nearly both say that he should have been Hurler of the Year in 2020. But I wouldn't be exaggerating. This year, he might be. He's in the conversation for. He might be make the shortlist. Might be just edged out. But like his semi-final performance was, another amazing performance. 5 points from play. He just makes it routine to score 4 or 5 points from play. I think you tweeted during the final, and Tom Morrissey's going to score 5 points from play again because that's like he only ended up with 3, but that's just like that's what he does. Like, and his it's funny they both play very, very similar roles in the sense that Larkin probably, and you've talked about before, but Mick Dempsey coming in and they started to play these real deep lying wing forwards that travelled up and down the pitch. Like Larkin was often seen the half back line as well. Like his foraging was as good as his scoring. I don't know if Kilkenny had a better forager than him. As you say though, Larkin was at this was his best. This was the best he was at probably for Kilkenny. Was at this time subsequent Hurler of the Year. I do think this is very close. I have to say. But I would be giving the nod to Larkin, but it is very, very close. It's not the foregone conclusion. You were trying to write off the ham, man.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I never tried to write him off. I actually said straight out he was Hurler of the Year last year. And again, fine margins and all that kind of crack. But like Larkin, first day out, scored 4 points against you. He'll probably be disappointed he only got 4 against. When there's an 8 like you involved in the opposition, he should be scoring more. He scored 3 against Wexford in the Leinster final. Then moving on to the All-Ireland semi-final, scored 1-2 against Cork. They scored just 1 goal in that game. Scored 1-4 in the All-Ireland final against Waterford. And I remember him setting up goals as well. The way he solos through, everyone knows how good he is at that and setting up goals and taking the ball on the burst. And when he's like soloing through at pace, you kind of feel like, right, this lad's just about to set something up or score here. So for my money, Michael Verney has just dropped off the line there. But I'm going to go ahead and make the executive decision to throw Owen Larkin into this team. I think Michael is just coming back on here, but I'll get the team up here. And Tom Morrissey, very good. Taken off the first day against Cork, Now, you're not going to write off his entire season over that and that alone. But Michael, I'm just going through Larkin and his performance in the All-Ireland final that year, scoring 1-4, setting up chances, destroying Watford. Tom Morrissey, really good all year. Maybe not quite the same level of a final, taken off the first day against Cork. So, and obviously he had a very, very good year, but I think we're agreed on Larkin.
Yeah, and I think the worrying thing from an opposition's point of view is that Morrissey can get better and probably will get better, and that's seriously worrying. And he could hit the heights of Larkin and could surpass them, but at this moment in time, yeah, you'd have to give it to Larkin. He was at his best.
Yeah, Connor says if Shefflin was at 11, then it would have been a good debate with Lynch. Well, maybe we'll kind of do that another day.
The red-haired wizards, we've gone through that before. My God, like, it's just, if you have red hair, your chances of being one of the best hurlers of all time is greatly increased.
Yeah. Patrick Coleman says that Lynch cannot be left out, and he wasn't. Maybe you're watching a little bit behind on the stream. So, right, let's get into the full forward line here. Starting off with number 13. Eddie Brennan or Aaron Gillane? Now, that's a pretty tasty one, isn't it?
Well, there's no point in saying any different. Any hope you have of playing for the coolest seniors this year goes out the window if Aaron Gillane is picked at number 13, and that's just a fact. Yeah,
well, look, I haven't been at training lately, and I mean, probably because we knew this debate was coming up at some point. So, Eddie, there's the reason why I hadn't been. Yeah, as well, Flash says, Gillane and Brennan. Jesus, how do you pick between them? So, looking at the All-Ireland final, Eddie Brennan scored 2-4.
2-4. Yeah,
and over the course of the season, scored 4-9 in 4 games over the course of the season.
This is the final where Brian Cody got man of the match, and Eddie was robbed of back-to-back man of the matches in All-Ireland finals, which I don't know if that's happened. But he was robbed of it by some genius in RTE who said
someone thought they were clever. I mean, what a ridiculous idea! That really annoyed me. I have to say that's an insult both to Watford, to the players, and almost to Cody in a way. Do you think he wants that nonsense?
Yeah, there's times, and it often happens in the field when lads are trying to be too clever, and this is one of those instances. It was Eddie Brennan was man of the match, in fairness.
Yeah. Aidan Doherty makes a good point here. He says, after building up a rep in Kilkenny for underperforming in finals, Eddie's return from play in 07, 08 and 09 finals was outrageous.
That's a fact, yeah. Like, he scored 1-5 in the 07 final, and like, it was a tactic, obviously, for Kilkenny to go after the inexperienced Seamus Hickey, and he kept that form in 08. Like, this was Eddie at his best, you would have to say, in 08. He was at his best. Was Gillane at his best in 2021? Probably not. He was superb in the final, though.
Yeah, and Eddie doesn't miss goal chances, really. And I think if you were to have Eddie Brennan in 2008 or Aaron Gillane in 2021 with a one-on-one chance with the goalkeeper to score. I mean, we saw Gillane putting one over the bar against Watford. He nearly knocked another one over the bar, hit the underside of the crossbar and went in past Sean O'Brien. And then obviously scored a goal in the final. But I'm going to take Eddie Brennan to score the goal more often. I'm going to take Gillane.
Eddie Brennan's misses were that rare that you can actually still remember them. Like, I still remember the one at the start of the 2010 final. Remember that one where he pulled on it and kind of come and smothered it, I think? Like, when he got in those positions, it was just, as Cyril used to say, it was bang back at a net. That's just a fact. Flash says there, Gillane's best year, I do think, was in 2019. And that was when he got his first All-Star. And he was superb against Kilkenny, and like he's very good.
I disagree. He had about 5 wides that game, and a lot of them on his right side.
Okay, but he was very good that year. That was the year he was brilliant in the Munster final that year as well. He's obviously. I just think last year and this year he delivered 2 really good All-Ireland final performances, and yes, big game performances are huge. Some of what came between was below what he would probably expect from himself, and what we expect from him probably too, I'd say. So I just favouring Eddie, I have to say. Eddie was as good as he ever was at this stage.
Yeah, okay, we're agreed on that one. Do you know what? Seamus Flanagan was in Hurler of the Year form this year and could end up in the shortlist, or he could. Henry Shefflin's obviously the better hurler in terms of like what he's done over the course of his career. That's not up for debate here. But Henry Shefflin, was he as good in 2008 as Seamus Flanagan has been in 2021?
Shefflin did the cruciate in the 07 final, and he somehow managed to keep up his record of not missing of starting every championship game for Kilkenny. He started against us in the first round. I remember he started corner forward. He wasn't himself. probably wasn't at his best in '08, from what I can remember. But you're looking at, was he a two-time hurler of the year at that stage? No, he wasn't. He was. Yeah, he was hurler of the year in 2000, wasn't he? And he was hurler of the year again in '06. So he had a two-time hurler of the year. He probably had 6 or 7 All-Stars at this stage as well. It's unfortunate for Flanagan to be coming up against Shefflin, but that's like, whether it's 10, 11 or 12 or 14, wherever he played, he was just, he's an absolute genius with the ball. And even like without the ball, as I said earlier, that was one of his best traits, was when he was without the ball, he was a supreme defender as well. But Flanagan, in fairness to him, Flanagan brought his form to another level this year. He only scored a point in the final, which I couldn't believe looking back on it. I think he set up about 1-5 and was just like a wrecking machine at different stages.
So you're saying there's no debate?
Sure. Like, if we're talking about some of the best hurlers of all time, Shefflin is going to be in the top 2 or 3. So I don't think there's really a debate.
Well, I'm not debating that point, which is very different to the point we are talking about, which is that season alone. And I'll go through the performances in those games. Up against Offaly in the first round, Henry Shefflin scored 11 points, 1 from play. The Leinster final against Wexford, scored 1-7, 0 from play. Going into the All-Ireland semi-final against Cork, scored 11 points, 5 from play. And in the final, scored 8 points, 2 from play. So over the course of the season, that's a return of 8 points from play. So yeah. Are you saying that that's above what Seamus Flanagan managed in his games? Like those games where he scored 5 points?
I like your moxie. You did a bit of research and you made a bit of a case.
Well, I just did it there off the top of my head. Like, I mean, if you want to look, there are things there that you can talk about.
There definitely are. I think, like, if we're only
you're getting carried away with the body of work over the course of the career. Let's be honest.
No, if we're only looking at scores, like you say, Seamus Flanagan only scored a point in the All Ireland final. Like, I don't remember what. Like, I look back at the OA final and see what Shefflin set up. I'm sure it was quite a bit. Like, but like, Flanagan only got a point in the final, if that's what you want to say. If we're just basing it on scores.
Okay, yeah, but I said 8 over the course of the season. We look at Flanagan. He got 2 the first day out against Cork. He got 1-3 against Tip. So that's 1-5. Then the semi-final, he got another 4. So that's 1-9. So 1-10. So just say, if you're to go with scores alone, it's not like just dismiss the argument, because we know that Shefflin obviously goes down as the great. And Flanagan has an awful lot of work to do to go down as a Limerick great. So I mean, we're not talking about 2 lads in the same sphere at all. But just in the course of that season, Shefflin did end up with an All-Star, of course he did, but there is a discussion to be made.
You have to say as well, Seamus Flanagan obviously debuted for Limerick in 18. He's won 3 All-Irelands in 4 years. Shefflin debuted in 99. I'm talking about the body of work up until the 08 final. Won in 2000, won Hurler Deer in 2002, won again in 2003, 5, 6, 7, 8. I appreciate your effort.
Well, you can appreciate it, but like, what part of what I'm saying can you expose? Like, where am I wrong?
If you were picking, a team in 2000, whether it's, just say both of these players are in their pomp. We'll just say both of these players are in their pomp. Shefflin 2008, Flanagan 2021. Who are you picking?
But that's the whole point. Like,
yeah, but I'm asking you to make a decision.
But I'm saying that Shefflin won 3 hurlers of the year. None of them were this season. And we just looked at what he scored over the course of the games from play, in games where, beating the lard out of Offaly, beating the lard out of Wexford, beating Cork comfortably, and beating the lard out of Waterford, versus Flanagan probably in tighter games. And he did score more. So I'm not questioning who's a better player here. I'm just saying you can't just ignore what I'm saying and say, well, Shefflin over the course of his career, what he'd done at that point. I'm talking about year for year. Was that a quieter year for Shefflin? He's only coming back from a cruciate, of course.
Yeah, sure, probably was. He still ended up with his 8 All-Star at the end of the year.
Yeah. Look, I mean, who had tougher opposition that year? Kilkenny in 2008 or Limerick this year?
Actually, you'd have to say Limerick had tougher opposition.
So at what point are you going to say that there's at least a debate to be had here? And maybe invalidate some of what I'm saying. But
we're having a debate.
Yeah, but you're not actually making any points or countering what I'm saying. You're just saying, look, I mean, he's one of the greats of all time.
Well, it's not as if he had a bad 2008 season.
Sure, I didn't say that. We're talking about who had the better one.
Yeah, well, that's not to say, but like we just you're talking about. So you want me to say that just because Flanagan might have had a better 2021 season that we should might have had that we should pick him in this team?
No, but I'm just saying we're picking it based on that season alone. We're not saying we're picking who's the better player ever or who's the better player up until that particular part of their career. We're just saying based on 2008, the performances in 2008 in isolation, 2021 in isolation, who are you going to pick based on what they delivered that year?
Yeah, we kind of are taking in previous performance into the equation now, in fairness.
Okay, well, you've just moved the goalpost after you laid this all out at the start, and now you're changing the game. Like you did with Tony Kelly in the All-Star team.
But we are saying about previous performance. We're not talking about post performances after this year. But we have talked about, like, Shefflin has a 10-year career coming up to this point. Flanagan has a 4-year career. We mentioned.
We can't talk about now. No, but we said we can't talk about Shefflin or Kilkenny 2006 against Cork when we're talking about 2008. We are talking about that year in isolation.
Okay. Do you want to put James Flanagan in full forward then?
Well, do you? Have I said enough?
No, I don't want to put him in full forward. As good of a year as he had, like, I still would want Shefflin over him any day of the week.
Well, of course, I'd want him any day of the week. Like, there's no doubt about that.
Any day of the week, including a week in 2021 or in 2008 when we're picking this team.
Well, I'll tell you what, the old Stockholm Syndrome has really, really got to you at this stage. The Offaly Stockholm Syndrome for Kilkenny. Right, we'll pick Shefflin. No doubt that he's the better player and obviously goes down as one of the greats of all time. Then final position, Casey versus Taggy. Peter Casey scored 5 points inside 24 minutes. A look at the All-Ireland final, 3 points for Taggy that day. What way are you starting to lean here?
I'd have to be leaning towards Casey. 15 points from play over the course of the championship. If I was looking at Taggy's career, I would say it probably peaked in 2006 when he was man of the match in the All-Ireland final and got 1-3. If I was looking at Casey, Casey's been very good for Limerick up until this year, but this year was his best year by some distance. Was it 5 points against Cork the first day? He ended up with a similar margin against Tip. He got maybe 3 or 4 against Tip, 3 against Tip, 2 against Waterford in the All-Ireland semi-final, and then 5 in the All-Ireland final in inside 24 minutes.
Yeah, it was the other way around. It was 3 against Cork and 5 against Tipperary. So I take your point. So yeah, very, very good season there. Taggy, obviously brilliant player, and scoring 3 points against Waterford, pretty good in the final. I just check and see what else he scored in some of the other games. I mean, obviously that isn't completely the be-all and end-all of these arguments, but scored a goal against G the first day out, scored 1-1 in the Leinster final against Wexford. So both of those games, absolute cakewalks. 5 points in the semi-final against Cork. Definitely can't dismiss that 123 to 17 point win. So that game was a game, and then scored 3 points in the All-Ireland final. Yeah,
it's a decent tally when you put. I know you're saying the first 2 games were cakewalks, but there's a decent tally put together in that year. In fairness, now.
Yeah, Flash says Casey better be in there. I'll be sending a message to Bernie next time I'm in Offaly. Next, will you do all-time best Limerick Kilkenny teams? Oh my God, that would be a disaster trying to figure that one out. But a good suggestion, Jack Nulty. Bernie, all of a sudden looking at 2021 Casey versus 2008 career of Shefflin versus career of Flanagan. I mean, like, look, you gotta start coming in here and going hard at Bernie, because there's an awful lot of this sort of Kilkenny bias. I don't do Tipperary bias, as everyone knows, but there's a lot of Kilkenny bias with this lad, this Offaly man here. So we're going with that, yeah.
We're going with Casey.
We're going with Casey ahead of Fogarty.
Yeah, it's based on what you read out there, I didn't think he'd had as good of a year as that.
Yeah, but like, just to score 5 points in 24 minutes of an All-Ireland final, like, both teams destroyed their opposition in that final. You just can't get away from that. And like,
in unmarkable.
And in a more competitive run, like a tougher run to the final, he put up some decent scores. Nisha says here, Taggy was savage, added so much more than just scores, showed he could move into another realm and dance with the stars. Yeah, but this might just have to be Casey. I think Casey showed he can move too. Shane makes very good points against Shefflin. It's not against Shefflin per se. It's more that, obviously Shefflin's all-time great, had a good season, back from the cruise ship, maybe not quite. I wouldn't rank it in his top 3 or 4 seasons, we'll put it that way. Go on, Shane Boy says the Donny 99. People think I'm trying to slate him now. I'm not at all. I actually used to work with him in the bank and everything. He's a great fella, so I'm definitely not trying to have a pop. But people do kind of run away with it when you start. Like, does this mean that I have a problem with Diarmaid Byrnes or with Kyle Hayes because I didn't pick them? No, it's just a debate and a bit of fun. And, that is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah. Just on Casey as well, you have to remember this was Casey's first All-Ireland final to start, and he winds up with 5 points. And now, if he hadn't been injured, he would have ended up with 8 or 9. That's just the way he was. He was literally unmarkable on that day. So I'd probably be just giving the nod to Casey in fairness. And I hope he gets back at some stage next year and features for Limerick.
Yeah, Flash says, King Henry lost the title a long time ago, lads. Joe is king. Joe Canning is obviously referring to who was the best player so overall between Limerick 2021, Kilkenny 2008. Oh, I didn't expect to come to that, but a great question from Jack Dulty. And keep the comments flying in. We absolutely love them. Like, it does add so much to it.
Well, it's like this, Shane. If we're looking at, as we said, and maybe I've jumped around a bit, we're looking at this 2021 in isolation and 2008 in isolation. So you're looking, essentially, are you looking back at the hurlers of the year? Is that what you're looking at?
Well, just before we said, we've Kilkenny with 8 players here and Limerick with 7, just before anyone asks. And we do have a little quick look at the lads on the sideline as well. But, God, best player. I mean, Owen Larkin is the one jumping straight off the page to me straight away for his performances that year. Who's going to be hurler of the year in 2021? Cian Lynch. God almighty, trying to pick between Cian Lynch and Owen Larkin here. Like, they're you could argue that Shefflin's the better player of all time. Well, like his obviously his CV makes him the better player of the lot of them here at the moment. Well, basically he is the best of the lot here. But like Cian Lynch versus Larkin for 2008 versus 2021. Is there anyone else you want to consider in that particular debate?
Well, Tommy's form was obviously just the whole way up, and he was obviously after winning another All-Star at the end of this year. He was after winning his 6th in a row at the end of this year. JJ was after winning his 4th at the end of this year. Tommy would probably come into the conversation because he was coming into his best. If you look at the routes to the final, you'd have to say Lynch did more against a better quality of opposition in 2021 than Larkin probably did in 2008. That's probably what my tip. He ended up with six from playing a final as well, and set up so much and rarely put a foot wrong throughout the whole year.
You probably can't remember off the top of your head, but do you have any idea if he made any special plans for Larkin that day in 2008?
Don't remember. Shane, you'd be making special plans for everyone. When you were playing, when you were playing them, that was the thing as well. Is that you might try and make special plans for Henry, and then just someone else would light it up. Like just one of the other 5 will absolutely light up, even if you manage to hold Shefflin scoreless or manage to hold him down at all. But I'd probably be just favouring Lynch because, I don't know if I thought he could take his game to this high of a level as quickly, maybe after even 2018 and all the pressure that comes up in hurler of the year and having a target on your back and being the man that every team is going after. And he's just managed to take his form to another level, in fairness to him. It's quite, the fact that they're both left-handers as well, I think is an interesting one, that we're both, fighting over who's the best hurler of that year as well is interesting too.
Yeah, Nisha added 2 Katogues, Larkin and Lynch, both very good in the air. Larkin better, great engine, unreal work rate. But if I was playing in a match to decide my life, Larkin would be the choice here. Just from that year, he scored 4 points against G, 3 in the Leinster final against Wexford. Ended up with 1-2 against Cork in the semi-final and 1-4 in the final. And it did stand out to me at the time. I do very clearly remember thinking that of all these players on a team that's battering everybody, to me, Larkin stood head and shoulders above the rest of the Kilkenny players in 2008. And it wasn't even up for question that he was hurler of the year, in my opinion, at the time. So there could be a little bit of recency bias when you look at Lynch and just talk about the performances he gave. But the reason that I asked you is, did you make any special plans for Larkin that year? Is because every team was pretty much making special plans for Lynch. First day out against Cork, he wasn't always marking him, but Jerry Millerick seemed to be picking him up the whole time. And then when he wasn't available for the final, is that the main reason that Lynch ended up going to town? Because he was up largely against Coleman and it just did not work out for Cork. Dan McCormick had the man-marking job the next day out. Trying to remember the semi-final. Yeah, of course, didn't Conor Gleeson go and try and man-mark Lynch, and like 6 points from playing the final, set up whatever 2-4, something ridiculous like that. To me, slightly just going to have to go edge for Cian Lynch here, but two brilliant players at the height of their powers.
Yeah, and you are like, it's just like that's 13 years ago. I don't remember. Like, I'd have to look back at it and see. But I whereas this year's final is, to the forefront of my mind. But like, Lynch was good in 18, as I said, but he's taken his game to another level this year. Larkin was brilliant up until 2008. 2008 was probably the high point. One thing I would agree with Nisha is he was so good in the air. Cian Lynch is very good, and he's good in the air, but Larkin could just come in and play or hurl almost and get away with it. He had it perfected that much. It's a tight one. Probably just to Lynch as well. He's winning hurler here for the second time this year. Like, that's, that just shows how high his levels have reached.
Yeah, that's a tough one. But yeah, look, we're just about going to go for Lynch here. We'll put him in as what are we going to call him here? Are we going to call him the captain or just the king?
Just put HOTY behind him.
Yeah, okay. Grant. Now, we just quickly look at the management teams, because it's an interesting one. Kylie versus Cody. Cody got man of the match in the All-Ireland final. But the number...
yeah, John Kylie never got man of the match in the All-Ireland final.
Yeah, Kylie, will you ever cop on? You have a bit more work to do here. But then the number twos, interestingly, two football men. And, we talked about this the other day, but, like, it's screaming out at us. Football tactics in a hurling team definitely does help, because, one of the big things that turned Kilkenny around is that their wing forwards basically play like Gaelic football wing forwards, and they were up and down.
Yeah. No, definitely, yeah. And the tactics we talked about with Hegarty and Morrissey are similar tactics that Nick Dempsey would have probably started to implement with Kilkenny after he came in at the end of 2005. So I definitely think that's interesting, and maybe the fact that looking at it with a different viewpoint, looking at hurling with a different kind of a lens, maybe. Just on Kinnerk, he's won 4 All-Irelands, none of, obviously 3 with Limerick, 1 with Clare, 3 under-21 All-Irelands with Clare as well as coach. Like, both with counties that, success has not been, there hasn't been a lot of it in either of those counties, whereas Kilkenny, are expected to win an All-Ireland most years. So Dempsey's role was obviously massive, but like what Kinnerk has done with counties kind of coming out of the blue, like you couldn't have said at the start of 2018, you wouldn't have been predicting Limerick to win no more than you would with Clare in 2013. Obviously, since Limerick won their first one, you're going to be predicting that they're going to be there or thereabouts. But what he has done, and both coaches have kind of revolutionised how hurling is played at that moment in time, haven't they? They really, really have. I think that's fascinating to look at. I always think, comparing Kylie and Cody, that Kylie, he might never say it, but I'd say he has mirrored himself on Cody somewhat. He might be a little less frosty and a bit more accepting than Brian Cody at times, but I wouldn't say it's definitely not beyond him to tell lads as it is, and I'm sure he has and will continue to do. But I do think you have two managers that are quite similar, I have to say, and they have two coaches that are very similar.
Yeah, and two managers, are they on the back of 3 and 4 years? They are. Well, Kilkenny won a 3 in a row this year, and Limerick have just won their 3rd in 4 years. Obviously, before that, Kilkenny hadn't won it for 2 seasons. God, this is a tough one. I think, God almighty, how do you decide this if you're just going 1 year in isolation? Looking at Cody's All-Irelands up until this point, he's obviously won in 2000, 02, 03, 6, 7 and 8. And Kylie, he's 6 to Kylie's 3 at this stage. I'll put it to you this way. Cody had to come through 0 adversity in the games that year. They just went out instead going, and they battered everyone from the front. Limerick had to come from 10 points behind to beat Tipperary. And maybe what they did at the water breaks, you can include the coaches in this, maybe the fact that they had to find a way to come from behind and that they had to negotiate better teams that year, just in isolation, might give it to Kylie. Like, you can't blame Kylie for what he hasn't yet won, because he might go on to win 2 or 3 more. Like, so we're not going to talk about Cody going off and winning 5 or 6 more All-Irelands, whatever it was at that point. So we can't really talk about that. So maybe just the fact that they came through more adversity might give it to John Kylie.
I think the fact that Kylie has managed to negotiate all the pressure that comes with All-Ireland success in a county where it's 45 years since they'd won the last one in 1973. Then they win in 18, and they're able to go this year then and do back-to-back for the first time in their county's history. Cody did 3 in a row, obviously, in 08, had been done before in Kilkenny. I'd probably be just leaning towards John Kiley, if I'm honest.
Yeah, Flash says Kiley could get a base off that third quarter against Tip, but maybe people might discredit him and give more credit to Kinnerk. To be fair, he doles out a fair bit of credit to Kinnerk himself. But Mick Dempsey did help completely revolutionise Kilkenny. I think that point has to be brought up time and again. He'd won 9 county titles with his club. Was it St. Joseph's in Leash? Yeah. And it's such a big factor in that. So, but are you going both Kilkenny or both Limerick, or can we mix and match here?
Coach and manager.
Yeah.
I think we should put the management team as a whole, if I'm honest. I think
we'll be going Kiley and Kinnerk?
We'll be asking who the best physio is. Yeah, I'd probably go, Janie Mac. I do think, like, Kilkenny expect to win. Limerick did not expect to win. And I think how they've managed that success, obviously Kiley being the manager, has been the one driving that. That's like that has to impress people to me. It has to.
Kinnerk is more lauded. I mean, everyone's been talking about Kinnerk. I don't know if people were talking about Dempsey to the same degree back then, were they?
No, but we probably weren't forensically analysing games as much then. It was maybe we thought there was less to analyse, even though there was. Even though, like, we thought that some people thought that Kilkenny didn't do tactics, even though they quite clearly did. But I'd be narrowly favouring Kiley and Kinnerk.
Okay, yeah, sure. Like the whole tactics thing, the devil's greatest trick was to convince people that he didn't exist. Isn't that what
Kaiser Soze, yeah.
Yeah. And then, actually, Joe, just a quick word for the benches, though, in that year for Kilkenny, because it was pretty ridiculous. I'll see if I can bring it on screen here.
This is a joke. This bench is ridiculous. You'll never see a bench like this again.
Yeah, 1 second now. I'll bring it up here, and hopefully people can see it. Scroll all the way down to it. Okay, so hopefully people can see that okay. I know the text is a small bit small, but bear with us all the same. The bench was, and some of these lads had probably established themselves more than others at this stage, but James McGarry, John Dalton, PJ Delaney, James Ryle, John Tennyson, Canis Hickey, Donncha Cody, Sean Cummins, Michael Fennelly, Richie Mullally, Michael Rice. Obviously the benches were allowed more back then, but you also had Willie O'Dwyer, TJ Reid, Richie Hogan, Owen Reid. So how many hurlers of the year are in there? So you've got Michael Fennelly, TJ Reid, and Richie Hogan. Jeez, it's not bad, is it?
No, it's not bad. And imagine to think they only brought on 2 subs, and one of them was a goalie and the other was TJ Reid. Imagine like the class that was sitting on the bench.
But actually, that's bad form from Brian Cody. I mean, you're absolutely battering the team. How can he get man of the match when he won't even give the lads a run from the bench?
There you go. Yeah, maybe he didn't want anybody to come in and impress and potentially take the accolade away from him.
Yeah, just actually, Sean, when I think about that, that is very bad form not to bring more lads in that day. Okay, and then just the bench for Limerick is Barry Hennessy, Conor Boylan, Aaron Costello, Colin Coughlin, Richie English, Robbie Hanley, Graham Mulcahy, Barry Murphy, Cathal O'Neill, David Reedy, and Pat Ryan. So again, we can't punish them for what they haven't yet done in their careers. Some of them could go on to do great things. Because TJ Reid and the boys hadn't won hurler of the year at that stage.
I think if we're looking, like, the Limerick 2018 bench was savage, with Shane Dowling coming in and with Peter Casey coming in. That same, since Dowling retired and McCasey is starter, the same quality is not in the Limerick bench. And I think that's why I find most interesting about Peter Casey being out next year. Who comes in? How does that affect their starting 15? And then how does that affect their impact off the bench as well? And that's going to be, I'm sure Kiley is already thinking, how am I going to strengthen my panel here? How am I going to get like a person to slip in for Casey and more options off the bench? It's the only real weakness that I can find in Limerick, and we're probably picking holes to say that their bench isn't as strong as maybe other benches. Yeah,
so we even said going into the final that we think Cork had a stronger bench, and I still believe that.
I would still think that. Yeah.
Pádraig Gill says anyone could manage that Kilkenny team. Same with Kerry in the 70s and the current Dublin era, likes of Mickey Hart and Kiley had to build from scratch. So that's a strong point, actually.
I totally disagree. I totally disagree.
On what basis?
1 second now. Padjo Whelan was over the Burr teams, the great Burr teams, and people always say that anybody can manage them. And like I've been in dressing rooms with a lot of those lads. Yes, they're big personalities in that, but you need somebody steering the ship. It's not just a case of you could throw anybody in there. The quality of the training won't be the same. The messages, instruction won't be the same. The right team won't be picked on a given day. Yes, it helps to have those players at your disposal, and it helps to have those leaders that will drive things on. But to say anybody could manage those teams is nonsense, in my opinion.
No, but the point he made is they had to build them from scratch. So Cody came in with Kilkenny, and it's not like they were a team that was doing nothing and hadn't won an All-Ireland for 45 years. If you look at the amount of coaching done on the sideline and with the tactics board and all that, there's a great comment in here from Aidan Doherty. Would Cody allow a Kinnerk whiteboard on the sideline? Don't know if he would. But just seems to me that there was, like, if you threw that Kilkenny team in 2008, they'd probably walk over all those teams anyway. And I'm not, obviously he's a huge reason for that. Whereas, like, there felt like there was more in-game management from Limerick for the reasons we talked about in the turnaround against Tip and that sort of stuff. So, like, without a manager, would Kilkenny have walked to the All-Ireland in 08 anyway?
At that point, probably because Cody had him in that sort of position where they potentially could have, and anybody could have taken over in 2008. But he put them in that position where they could do that. Do you know what I mean? But I totally appreciate his point. Kylie building from scratch, and again, as I said, in a county that's not used to winning, to build a squad, one thing, to build a backroom team that could that he's able to control such big characters with big reputations and keep it all running seamlessly is amazing. You have to think as well, Cody's managing less people in Kilkenny, I would say. A lot less people, coaching wise.
Yeah, and you know what? I've made this point before about, people would look back at the Coola team that did well there for a few years, win the All-Irelands, and say, Ash, look at all those players, how could you not? But Matty Kenny did pull it all together. So
yeah, I don't buy that point. The person steering the ship is so important. Yeah,
so Nisha adds, Cody made some of those fellas into top-class senior players that weren't superstars underage. Owen Larkin, a prime example, Gerta too, Jerry Kling and Jackie Tyrrell. So Gil's point is totally wrong from up above. So I think we'll just have one final look at it there. Will we? Have we anything else to add into this before we finish up on the show today?
No, but sure, when you look at that starting 15, according to Pádraig Gill, anyone can manage them. Even though they're from different counties.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look. Sure. Shall we leave it at that? So, will we?
Yeah. A1. Yeah. I tell you what. You'd love to be. You wouldn't mind slipping in somewhere if anyone left that starting 15. You'd be happy enough to slip in there somewhere. You'd have fairly decent lads around you anyway.
And you stop the lights, you'd be getting ball in the front foot all over the place. Do you know what? You'd be tired from getting ball in. So just a reminder, we're brought to you by orgaretro.com. If you want to get this class Wexford jersey, that cool Mead one, any of the other ones, go to orgaretro.com. Use the profile or the promo code OurGame. Also, really would love if people would subscribe to the channel, especially on all the different channels, but especially on YouTube. If you click the button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, it's free to subscribe. It helps the channel because it gets recommended to more people. Obviously, we want to build a channel going into the future. Also, if you want audio podcasts, go to patreon.com/OurGame. A £5 a month to support the channel. When you think of all the stuff we're putting out, it's probably not that big of a commitment. We'd hope that people would subscribe. Many have already, but if people could keep doing it, that'd be great. So that's about the height of it, Michael. Sure, look, we'll get you again, will we?
Take her handy, Shane. Mind yourself.